So welcome to our session, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. We'll just do a couple of quick introductions so you know who you're talking to today. So my name's Katie Wall. I'm as Michael said, I'm the head of continuous improvement and analysis at Sheffield Hallam University. I've worked at Hallam for around 10 years. I moved to the team that I work in now in 2015, originally as a business analyst. I went to the Lean conference in 2016 at the University of Stirling and found my people and realised that that's what I wanted to do. That's where I wanted to work. And I secured the continuous improvement manager role in 2016. And I've kind of worked in that role ever since. Emma, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yep, I'm Emma Morris. I'm the Senior Continuous Improvement Analyst. So I joined the team shortly after Katie. So I had a background in project management and PMO and all things project related, but actually similar to Katie, I kind of found my niche in the CI world and realised I've been doing CI all along and I just didn't realise that's what it was. So yeah, I've been to a couple of conferences. I went to the one in Tromsø, so hi to Sven, Ari and Karen, it was really great. And yeah, we're super excited to be presenting today. Sort of my strengths and skills is around the training delivery, and so I was kind of a key part in creating the training that we're going to share with you today.
Thanks, Emma. So a little bit of housekeeping before we start, just so you've got the lie of the land. So we're going to be doing, Emma and myself are going to be doing a little bit of talking. We're going to be sharing our story about our training development at Sheffield Hallam. We always like everything we do to be interactive, so we are going to be asking you for your input at various points throughout the session. Pop your questions in the chat at any time. We've got a Q&A session at the end. We're going to be using a Miro board. Depending on how the sessions go, that might be questions to us, or it might be creating a bit of discussion between the group that we've got today. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, do you want to move on, Emma? Okay, so a little bit more about us and our service before we get into the presentation proper. We are a tiny team at Sheffield Hallam. We are a team of 3. We are small but mighty, small in numbers but big in ambition. We run the whole CI service for the whole of the university. We're an independent service in as much as we're not attached to any academic college or academic department. We're a free service. Anyone can access our support. Anyone can come to us for help. Just to context that, the university consists of 18 academic departments across 3 colleges and various research centres. We've got around 30,000 students and around 4,000 staff, so we are relatively large for a university in the UK. We're a demand-led service. We always have been. That's how the service grew. We started in around 2014. We were getting requests into our business analysts that were really process improvement, service development type requests. That's how we grew the service. We haven't yet managed to deploy a strategic rollout of improvements across the university. But that's not to say that we haven't got support at a senior level. We absolutely have. We work very closely with our director, who's got a direct line into our Pro-Vice-Chancellor, and myself and Emma have met the Vice-Chancellor and talked about what we do on several different occasions. And we're not above sending a cheeky email to say we're presenting at an international conference on Friday. So he's very aware of what we do, but the time's not really been right to try and deploy a strategic kind of rollout of improvement across university, but it's on our list. As I say, we're an independent service in as much as we're not attached to a college or any kind of central service like student services or anything like that, but we are nestled within our transformation directorate. The Transformation Directorate is a wider team of project managers and business analysts. I also manage the business analysts, so that creates quite a nice link. The PMs and the BAs really work on transformational change, so the big change projects that are helping the university to achieve its vision, and also the the enabling tech projects that help achieve that vision as well and help enable those projects. In terms of the CI service, we tend to tackle smaller business as usual type change, so a lot of problem resolution. It's usually change that is managed within local areas or within a few local areas, and decisions can be made through kind of middle management rather than being need to escalate it up to university level decision making. But the beauty of us working together in that way is it creates a real strong connectivity between what's happening on the ground with local change initiatives right through to what's happening at a strategic level. So it gives the transformation director a really good overview at change of the university at all different levels. And it also helps Emma and myself to enable improvement activity to happen within the strategic project. So looking at it holistically rather than looking at a straightforward system implementation, looking at the processes that surround that as well. So in terms of our service offer, when we were formally approved in 2015 as a service, we developed 3 strands to our service offer, which is the way that we wanted to kind of sell ourselves, if you like. So the first strand is practical support, and I'm sure this will be familiar to pretty much everyone in the room if you work in a CI type team. So we do a lot of the standing at the front of the room, facilitating brown paper. Well, it used to be brown paper and post-its. It's now kind of Miro boards and very steep learning curves when we went into the pandemic. But yeah, lots of problem resolution, lots of problem resolution, lots of supporting stakeholders. The second strand, which we also spend a lot of our time doing, is training and knowledge transfer. We're going to talk about this in more detail further in the presentation. So all I'll say at this moment is that consists really of formal scheduled training courses, but also we do a lot of bespoke training, a lot of individual one-on-one coaching, and a lot of staff away days, development days, things like that. And then finally, the biggest nut to crack is that the cultural change at the university. So the first 2 strands really help with that. But some of the other things that we do are things like the language that we use, using improvement language, developing local small CI groups and supporting them with their development, supporting them with their activities, sharing best practice, attending things like this, bringing best practice back into the university, and just trying to get the word of improvement out into the ethos of the university. As I say, we've not yet managed to crack the strategic deployment notes, but it's on our list. So that the third strand really relates back to what Gavin was saying in his keynote speech on Wednesday, the brilliant keynote speech, I should say, about planting trees that you'll never see. So that's what the cultural and networking point is. Okay, want to move on, Emma? So I'm going to pause there just for a second, and we're going to ask you a bit of an icebreaker question. And we're also going to test our technology because we've never used it before, so we'll see if it works. We do love a bit of interactivity in our sessions, and this icebreaker is one that we use in one of our training courses. It's a little bit daft, but it does have a point, which you'll hopefully see later. So we're going to put 5 phobias up on the screen, and we're going to ask you which one do you think is which is the top phobia, which is number 1 phobia. So if you want to scan the QR code, and that should open an app called Slido, or you can pop the slido.com link into your web browser and use the code to join the session. Then you should get the options, and we want you to choose which one you think is the top phobia. We've made it a little bit harder because we haven't put definitions on there. Some of those you will probably be familiar with, some you might not be familiar with. So give it a go. Have we got any results coming through, Emma? It's not changed. Oh, here we go. Oh, okay. Oh, it's working. That's a relief. So top one coming out as arachnophobia. Okay, just give you another few seconds. Okay, I think it's settling. Okay. Okay, so top one come out as arachnophobia. That's interesting. I'm wondering whether that's because most people know what arachnophobia is and the other ones might be a little bit more opaque. Interestingly, the one glossophobia has come out as the least voted for. And actually that is according to the survey that we looked at, that is the top phobia. So 80% of people who responded to the survey said that they suffered from glossophobia. Now, glossophobia is the literal translation is fear of the tongue. What that actually translates to is fear of public speaking. Now, what's interesting about this is number three, necrophobia, is the fear of death. So most people that responded to this survey were more afraid of public speaking than they were of dying, which is just mind-boggling, really. So we'll come back to those survey results a little bit later on, and you'll see why that's relevant when we get further on in the presentation. So relieved the Slido app worked. Okay, so in the spirit of telling stories, we are going to tell you about our journey and how we developed our training offer at Sheffield Hallam. So one of the first things we did when we started to develop our CI service was to develop a pilot training course, which we then turned into a 4-part modular continuous improvement course. So this is 4 half days that we run over the course of around 4 to 5 months, depending on when we can fit the sessions in. Should just mention at this point that this isn't strictly speaking lean training. We do touch on lean in the training, but we don't really talk about, we don't use the language of lean so much at our university. I won't go into that too much in this because that's not what the session's about, but I just wanted to stress that. So I would say the training course is kind of broadly equivalent to yellow belt training, but it's not we don't call it out as lean training or lean Six Sigma or anything like that. So the course takes candidates through what is continuous improvement, where does it come from, touch a little bit on lean values, lean approaches, takes you through investigation, problem definition, root cause analysis, right through to generating solutions, choosing options, and then action planning and implementation. So the full, what we would say is the full cycle of an improvement initiative. We train around 20 to 25 tools during those 4 modules. It's a really interactive course. As you'll see from today's session, Emma and I don't like to talk too much. We like to hear from the people that we're doing the training with. So it's very interactive. We do a little bit of theory, but the majority of the course is group work, having a go at the tools. Some of it's kind of facilitated work up at whiteboards, others is group work at desks. But we strongly feel that the best way to learn is to have a go at the tools. Ever since its inception, the course has been fully booked. We've always had people on the waiting list. We train about 20 to 22 people at a time. And the course has always had great feedback. Obviously, being improvement practitioners, we ask for feedback and we act on feedback that we get. Always been really good. The format of the course, apart from a few tweaks here and there, has largely remained unchanged. And we thought, because of this feedback, we thought we cracked it. We thought, oh yeah, we're really getting the message of continuous improvement out there. People are understanding it. They're going to go away. They're going to start using the tools. They're going to start doing their own improvement initiatives. This is with our cultural change strands, this is doing really well. So as time went on, we started to build up this little army of delegates, trainees across the university, and oftentimes they'd come to us for advice. Oftentimes they'd be in the practical sessions that we were delivering, and we began to think about our return on investment, really. So how can we translate the training that we're delivering into some kind of cashable evidence of the impacts that we're having at the university? So we started to ask people, we started to talk to our little CI army out there about what that looked like for them. Were we having an impact? What were they doing with the training that we delivered for them? We put out a survey and got some results back from that, but mainly we were talking to people. And what we found like that through doing that process was actually the impact the training was having was not having the impact that we thought it was. And Ruth's session on Wednesday, also the sticky learning session, that really resonated because that was our experience. We were finding that people were on board with the idea of continuous improvement. They were committed to the approach and they'd taken on the mindset, but actually translating that into practical application that wasn't really happening. They weren't really delivering their own workshops. They were using the tools, but it was more on their own, or just with their small kind of immediate team, rather than doing wider improvement initiatives like we'd hoped. And that was on the slide there. That was a really common statement that we heard from people. We don't feel confident to do what you and Emma do. We don't feel confident to get a group of 20, 25 stakeholders in a room and stand in front of them and use a tool to get some outputs from that. So that was a bit of a bit of a light bulb moment for Emma and myself. And we thought, well, how did we feel when we first started in our improvement roles? How did we get to grips with that next step, with taking that next step? And we started to unpick that word confidence a little bit, and what does that actually mean? So when Emma and myself talked that through, we thought, actually, what we don't do with the training is we talk about the theory of the tools. We get people to have a go in this safe space of the training room. But when you want to use those tools as a practical application, it's actually much more than that. There's much more thinking that goes into it than that. There's a lot of soft skills. Confidence absolutely is a part of it, and that's where the glossophobia comes from, and that's why we like to use the icebreaker at the start of our workshop facilitation training, because it gets everyone on the same page that pretty much everyone in the room will be feeling like you do about standing up in front of people. But you can do public speaking courses, you can do that kind of thing, and is that going to be actually any use? Possibly not in this situation. Emma and myself, when we were training, we spent a whole load of time watching our head of service, who actually first started to develop the service. We spent a lot of time making notes, observing, listening, shadowing, writing up workshop outputs before we actually got the chance to lead sessions of our own, and that's how we learned. So some of the thinking that we needed to do was not just about the confidence, but also about, so how do you, when you've got all this toolkit, you've got these brilliant lean tools, you've got these other tools that you've extracted from various different places, how do you know which one's the right one to do the job that you need to do? How do you know what approach to take with the group of stakeholders you're going to be working with? How do you feel comfortable in leading that group of stakeholders and listening to what they need and supporting them to discover the solutions that they need to get to and work out how they can implement the improvements. So that led us really to develop our second kind of formal course, which is the workshop facilitation course. And as Emma's popped up there with my favourite little cat picture, effective facilitation isn't just about having the right tools, it's about having the mindset and the confidence to lead workshops. So I'm going to pause a little bit there, and we're going to do our second go at Slido. So we're really interested to hear from you, and I think it'd be really good for everyone in the room just to understand where you are on this journey. So we're going to pop another little question up, which is around how effective is your current training offer in supporting your trainees to become confident facilitators. So scan the QR code again, or if you've shut it down, or the question should have just popped up if you've still got Slido open. I'll give that a minute or so. Okay, just give it a second. Okay, these results are going to be really useful for us when we go into the last session, which we're hoping to be a bit of a Q&A or a bit of people sharing their experience. And I think actually looking at the results we've got there, people might have a few questions. I can see some popping up in the chat already for Emma and myself. But we've also got a few people that are saying very effective. So I'd be really interested to understand what you're doing as part of this and how you're cracking that nut, if you like. Okay, lovely. Thanks very much for contributing to that. I'm going to hand you over to Emma, who's going to talk to you more about our facilitation course.
Okay, thank you, Katie. Just trying to wait for the slide to progress. Typical. There we go. Okie dokie. So you've heard a little bit about kind of where we got to, our journey in looking at how we adapt our offer. And we'd identified this gap and we realised that we were missing something. And it was about, as we said, about the mindset and about the confidence. And so we kind of thought, well, what can we do to kind of help our trainees to take that next step and to bridge that gap between the knowledge that they'd picked up and actually effectively facilitating sessions. So we had a look around the university to kind of see, you know, what's already available. You know, there was Train the Trainer and effective presentations, and they were quite good, but they didn't really encapsulate what it felt like to actually prepare for and deliver an improvement workshop. So we thought, well, we'll just create something because there's nothing else available that kind of suits our needs. And so we kind of started to put in a few drafts together. We did a little bit of storyboarding, but nothing was really quite right. And we thought, what is it that we're missing? And we went back to that feedback that people had given us around, we can't do what you do. We're not confident enough to do what you do. And we thought, well, what is it that we do? You know, what's this kind of magic tool that people think that we've got that allows us to stand up there and deliver workshops? And so what we kind of started to do was actually plot out the steps that we take when we're preparing for a workshop and delivering a workshop, just to kind of show people that, you know, it's not magic, it's just kind of common sense and it's just a framework. Obviously, it's continuous improvement and we love a cycle and we love a framework. So this is kind of where we got to, and we developed our facilitation framework. So I'm going to talk you through each step. And I'm also going to tell you how we then replicate that step in the training itself. So we start at the very beginning with a problem or an idea. So this is the point where people come to us as a service and they say, oh, hi, Katie, hi, Emma. You know, we've got this process, it's not really working, there's something not quite right. Can you run as a workshop? Or we've got this idea, we're not really sure how to structure it and implement it. Can you run as a workshop? Absolutely, yes, we can. That's what we're here for. So we needed to kind of think about how we get this across in the training for our delegates. So what we did is we kind of, when we get our trainees together in the room, we have 3 small groups, and I'll talk about the structure of the training a little bit later on. And what we do is we give them a scenario and we give them each a different scenario. And those scenarios are based on real life examples of CI work that we've been asked to do in the past. We make the scenarios quite generic and we kind of put them in the format of an email that we would typically receive. And what we do is we ask the groups to kind of read through the scenario and start to think about what is being asked of them. And from that very moment, they become honorary members of the Continuous Improvement Service. And now it's your job to think about how you're going to go about planning a workshop for this issue. So we move them on to the next step, which for us is usually investigation. Now, in the real world, if we get a request in, myself or Katie would then meet with the person that had asked for our support, and we'd just sit down and have a chat and say, right, tell us what's going wrong, and tell us what it is that you want to achieve. What are your objectives? Have you got any timescales? Who needs to be involved? And all of that information kind of helps us to think about how we're going to put an approach together to give them the support that they need. So in the training, what we do is we give our groups an A3 improvement charter, which I'm sure a lot of you will be familiar with. And we ask them to think about picking out the key bits of the information from the scenario they've been given and plotting that onto the A3. So we get them to start thinking about the overall objectives, the stakeholders, the background, what's already been done, that kind of thing. So they're thinking about the scenario and they're thinking about a potential approach. What we do at that point is we ask them to think about any questions that they would ask the person that had asked for their support, or things that they would need to kind of help them build this picture of what this workshop is starting to look like. So then we get them to move on to the approach. So this is the chance where the trainees can refresh their knowledge of the tools and techniques that they picked up on the modular training course. So what we do in the training is we give them a little pack, and the pack contains a user guide, a 1-page user guide for all of the tools and techniques that they'd covered on their training previously. And it kind of helps them think, well, I've got this problem, so I think actually I'm going to pick this tool to fix that issue. So it gets them thinking a little bit. Now, what we do to help them along is we give each tool and technique a difficulty rating, and that's based on our experience of how difficult that tool is to facilitate in a workshop. So, for example, if you're using reverse brainstorming, it's pretty straightforward, a little bit of instruction, a little bit of guidance, and you can pretty much run it yourself without too many issues. Something like a SIPOC or a SIPOC with a racy tool attached, it's a little bit more complicated. You do need a little bit of experience. You kind of need to know what you're doing. And that helps the trainees to think realistically about which tool they can apply to the problem and which tools they can use in a workshop setting. We also give each tool and technique a time scale of how long it takes to use in a workshop setting. So again, reverse brainstorming, you can probably do it in like 30 to 45 minutes, depending on the situation. A SIPOC would probably take a couple of hours. And again, this all kind of helps them to build this picture of what their workshop is starting to look like in terms of an outline and a framework, an agenda and timings. And all of this information kind of gets put onto the A3 improvement charter, and they're starting to build this kind of richer picture. So by this point, they know what the problem is, they've done a little bit of investigation, and they're starting to think about the approach that they're going to use for putting their workshop together. So this leads us nicely into the next step, which is preparation. And this is something that can be easily overlooked in the real world. Now, we know as experienced facilitators that you can't just turn up to a workshop and just pull it out of thin air, because it will go south, and it will go south very fast. And you'll be left looking a little bit stupid, quite frustrated, and you won't get anything useful out of it. So we really like to stress how important it is and how critical it is to effectively prepare for your workshop. And this covers a multitude of things. It can be practical things like thinking about the size of the room that you're going to need. Have you got enough whiteboard space? Do you need to prep your materials in advance? Do you need brown paper? Do you need flip charts? Think about how you're going to run it. Are you going to lead it and facilitate it? Are you going to ask the people to kind of get involved and make it interactive? And all these things kind of you need to think about in advance to make sure that your workshop plan is solid and that it's going to kind of deliver what has been asked of you. Again, all of this kind of gets built onto the A3 improvement charter. And so by this point, they should have a well-rounded plan of attack for their workshop with an agenda, with some timings, and thinking about how it's all going to structure and what's going to come out of it. So this is where it kind of gets a little bit real. And this is the thing that we were talking about earlier, the facilitation part. This is the scary public speaking part that nobody wants to do. People aren't comfortable standing up there at the front of a room and delivering workshops. I think if you'd asked me and Katie sort of like 5-6 years ago, do you see yourself standing in front of hundreds of people delivering workshops or doing them online? We'd have been like, don't be ridiculous. We would have just run out of the room. And so we kind of give our trainees a bit of an opportunity to practice facilitation, but in a safe environment. So what we do, and it's quite sneaky, is we ask each group to come up to the front of the room, and we said, right, you are now the CI service, and we are your workshop attendees. What we want you to do is to tell us why you're here, what you're going to do, which tool you're going to use, what we can expect, how long it's going to take, and present that to us as though you are running the workshop. And this kind of gives them an opportunity to stand up there and deliver something. It's really, really kind of short period of time. It takes them about 15-20 minutes. Obviously, we give them time to prepare in advance. So we say to them, think about what you're going to say, run through it in your head. So you've got your notes there, you can be comfortable and you can be prepared. Now, it's not all just about the preparation, and people do still get nervous. We get nervous. I'm sure the people that have been presenting at the conference this week have also been nervous. So what we do is we talk through some practical hints and tips about how you can be more confident when it comes to public speaking. Now, there's no magic training course that you can go on that will give people that confidence overnight. We know when it comes to facilitation that comes with experience, and it comes with practice, and it comes with time. Unfortunately, it also comes with kind of getting it wrong and learning from that and adapting your facilitation skills yourself as you move on. But we talk about things like remembering to breathe, remembering to smile, remembering to make eye contact. We talk to them about thinking about the tone of your voice and how you present yourself. We talk about, having some water handy just in case you kind of trip over your tongue and you get a bit lost. So take some time out to kind of get a breath, get a drink of water, just calm everything down and make sure that you are feeling ready and prepared. Even silly things like think about what you're going to wear. If you're standing up delivering a 3-hour SIPOC workshop, you don't want to be wearing brand new shoes. Wear something comfortable. We talk about practice as well. Practice makes perfect. And we talk about running through the session in your head the day before, maybe have a test run, see how it's going to go. But the most critical thing that we have to stress at this point is, even though this is the scariest part of the framework, it's just a little segment. It's just that one tiny little piece in the corner. And if you look at the whole framework, all of that other stuff that sits around it, the investigation, the approach, the preparation, the planning, that is your secret weapon. That is your comfort blanket. And if you've done that well, if you have confidence in your plan and your approach, it makes your facilitation experience so much easier. You're still going to get nervous, and that's just natural. And so we kind of give them that safe space to prepare and do a little bit of facilitation practice, but we do it very carefully and we make sure everyone's comfortable when we do it. Okay, so we like to remind them that once the workshop is finished, their job hasn't finished. You might be thinking, oh God, I'm so glad that's over. I can go and sit down now. But actually, there's still work for you to do as a facilitator. And again, this is something that's really easily overlooked. So what we get them to do as part of their presentation is we get them to do a little closing speech. We have this kind of silly, it's like a magic bubble of time. And we kind of say, right, so we want you to pretend that your workshop has gone really well. You've got loads of outputs. Everyone's been really engaged, enthusiastic. Now tell us what you're going to do next. And so they do a little closing speech that says, thank you for coming. We've had a really great time. Thanks for your input. We're going to take the outputs away and this is what we're going to do next. And it gets them thinking about, right, I need to think about putting some time aside to do some write-up, do some analysis and think about where we take this next. So they've kind of gone through the whole framework and hopefully it's kind of given them the security and confidence that there's nothing magic about what we do. It's just a series of steps and the facilitation itself is just a little segment of that. And it really helps to put that all into context. So that is our facilitation framework in a nutshell. There is a lot more to it, but we kind of wanted to give you the bare bones of it just for the session today. So I'm going to talk about the practical stuff just to kind of explain, how we run the training, the things that we take into consideration, just in case this is something that you think may be useful for your trainees. Now, we find that the course adds the most value in a face-to-face setting. So obviously the session was designed to reflect how we prepare for on-campus face-to-face workshops. I will say at this point that we haven't adapted this training for online delivery. We have done that with a lot of our other training, but this kind of adds the most value when you're doing face-to-face workshops. So we haven't neglected our trainees completely. What we've done is we've put together some sort of hints and tips around delivering online workshops. We've done some screencasts about how to use Miro and put some examples in of how we've used Miro. There's a little Miro boot camp that people can use, so they can still access hints and tips about how to deliver workshops virtually. But we're really excited to kind of get back on campus and start delivering this training again where we think it adds the most value. We keep the numbers low for the session. So we tend to have about 15 people at a time in the workshop. So we run it 2 to 3 times a year. It normally lasts about 4 hours. We have 3 groups with 4 to 5 people in each group. And the reason we do that is to increase engagement and to make sure the trainees feel comfortable. Obviously, people are nervous, and that's part of the reason why they're there. So we take that into consideration. You'll know that you've seen people in settings or workshops where the quiet ones will sit at the back and not engage and not say anything. And the reason we keep the numbers low is to encourage those people to kind of actively take part and to kind of make them feel comfortable. Just silly things like have a big room, but not a lot of people. So you're not feeling hemmed in, you're not feeling claustrophobic. It's a comfortable and it's a safe environment. So that's really, really important to kind of get people engaged. We talked about this earlier. So the training room is a safe space. And this kind of harps back to the things that we've been talking about earlier about, respect for people is really critical in this. And so we really encourage people to feel confident, to feel safe. We say this is your opportunity to practice and get it wrong. No one's going to be judging you. We're not going to say that was terrible, you need to do it again. We do offer constructive feedback once people have done their presentation, but we also get the other trainees to think about how they can help each other. So if they sense that someone is feeling uncomfortable, think about what they can do to make everyone kind of think, we're part of this team, we're part of this together. We are honorary members of the CI service today. Let's think about how we can get through this together. We never use the word role play. We thought about this long and hard when we put the training together. Obviously, the presentation part was tricky, and we thought we could just get them to stand there and say, right, what we've done is we've put a plan together, and we thought, can we get them to do it as though they are actually delivering the session? And we was like, is that role play? Well, yeah, it is kind of. Do we call it role play? No, let's not do that, because they're just going to run out of the room screaming and terrified. If you told them in advance, we're going to ask you to do some role play, they would have just said, oh no, I'm not interested, I'm not going to sign up for that. So what we do is we get them to do the delivery, but by pretending they're in the session, it's kind of like role play by stealth, but we just avoid the word role play altogether. And so we kind of tried it the first time, and we thought they're either going to love this or they're going to hate it. And everyone was really happy to do it. And we were like, oh, wow, this has actually worked a lot better than we thought. So yeah, we just avoid the word role play altogether. It's just a practice session for facilitation. And then another really silly thing that we do is we provide the physical equipment to use in the training. So everyone kind of laughs at us when we turn up to workshops. We have a little box, it's got all of our kit in it. It's got our post-its, our marker pens, our whiteboard eraser, blue tack, sellotape, everything. So we're prepared. And that's what we were saying earlier. That's part of our secret weapon. That's part of our comfort blanket. We've got that little box of tricks, and we know we've got everything we need for the session. So in the training, we provide all the materials that we would normally use, and it kind of gives them that physical sense of actually preparing to stand up and deliver the workshop. So they're not just standing there with one sheet of paper. We get them to be kind of as expressive as they want to. They can stick things up on the wall, they can do a little presentation, they can kind of use post-it notes, things like that. It's just that physical aspect of having everything around you that you need to be able to effectively deliver that workshop. Okay, hopefully that's all been useful. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some time now to do some kind of group reflections. Now, there's a couple of ways that you can do this. We've set up a Miro board, which I will... Oh, Katie, can you pop a link to the Miro board in the chat, please? So we've set up a Miro board. If you want to, you can take yourself off into the Miro board. And you can kind of stick some notes on some post-its. What we've done is we've replicated the questions that are on screen in the Miro board. And we want you to think about sort of what barriers do your trainees face? And as trainees or as facilitators, how can you help them to overcome those barriers? We want to know what you think is the most important part of delivering effective workshops. Is it the planning? Is it the preparation? Is it the facilitation? And we kind of want to know about your experiences of becoming facilitators. Did you have a fear of public speaking when you started out, or do you still have a fear of public speaking? How do you manage those nerves, and how do you think you can get that message across to your trainees that we all get nervous and it's perfectly fine and it's just one of those things? And there's a little section there about anything else that you want to know. So I am going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm actually going to share the Miro board. Second. So you can see it. If you don't want to go into the Miro board, feel free to just switch cameras off, take yourselves off mute, and just talk to us. Bear with me a second. Okay. Oh, everyone's in there. Look at that. All right, let me just switch off those things. So you can see the questions up there. What barriers do trainees face as a trainer? How can you help them overcome the barriers? What do you think is important? And what was your own experience of becoming a facilitator? Like I said, if you don't want to go in the Miro board, feel free to just chat to us now and start asking any questions. Have we got any questions in the chat already?
We did have a question a little bit earlier on from Michelle. So Michelle was, just let me find it. Michelle was asking, how are trainees selected? Can anyone register, enroll, or do we target them? The course is open to, so the Introduction to Continuous Improvement course, the 4-modular course, is open to anyone. And we have a real mix of people on that from all levels of the university. So we've had some really quite senior managers attending that course, which has been brilliant, right through to kind of various different corners and areas of the university. So it's open to all. We tend to find when we always ask at the start of the session why people have enrolled and how they found out about it. And the majority of people say a colleague recommended it, or my manager said she thought that I'd find this really interesting, or quite often, not want to blow our own trumpet, but we get quite a lot of comments. Oh, they said it was the best course they'd ever been on, so we wanted to come, which really sets us up to fail right from the first session. So yeah, anyone can come on the course. We do occasionally have people that have been directed through the annual appraisal process and things like that, but it's not really directed in terms of targeting particular types of people. And the tools that we teach, the tools that we train, could be used by anyone. Coming on to thank you, Tanya. You just preempted what I was going to go on to say. So for the workshop facilitation course, we do the 4-module course is a prerequisite to that, simply because it's so much centered around the tools and the toolkit that it would be very difficult if you'd not done that to come on to the workshop facilitation course, because it's all around that toolkit. So yeah, for the facilitation course, it is a prerequisite that they've done the modular course first. Michael, we've got a couple of questions on the Miro board, but I'll just go back to Tanya in the chat. So Tanya's asking about a recap of what tools are covered in the 4 modules that they pull from the training. So we cover a variety of tools, really. So things like your standard improvement tools like Tim Woods, 5S, things like that. We cover SIPOC, or we call it SIPOC. You say SIPOC, we say SIPOC. Other people say SIPOC. Cover that. RACI tools. So the first module is very much about looking at the process and the mechanics of the process. The second module is more about the customer. So we do customer journey mapping, personas, critical to quality we cover, I think. Do we do that? Voice of the customer we do in module 2. It's been so long since we've done it. And then we look at things like measures, FMEA, my mind's going blank now.
Reverse brainstorming, root cause analysis.
Yes, of course. Fishbone, 5 whys. So what we can do actually, we'll leave the link to this Miro board live. We'll leave this board live so you can dip in and out of it for the rest of the day. So we could actually just put a bit of a rundown of what tools we cover perhaps later in the day for our modular course. But equally, if you want to get in touch, we can send you kind of the content and things like that. If that'd be useful for people, just let us know.
Yeah, our email address is on the bottom of the board. So feel free to drop us an email if you want to get hold of any of the materials. We're more than happy to share. We've actually invited a few other universities to come and observe this training because we were so proud of it. And I think Linda from Cambridge has actually adapted and is now delivering a form of this training. So we're not precious. We're all about sharing with everybody else. So if you wanted to get hold of the materials, just kind of get in touch, and we'd be more than happy to talk to you about it.
So we've got another question on the Miro board about offering ongoing coaching. So yeah, this is something that we're really passionate about actually, and we try and keep in contact with a lot of our trainees, a lot of our delegates, to support them on their improvement journeys. And what we're finding now is that we're getting a lot of them coming back to us to say they need to do a piece of work, they've got a small project to run, can they just talk to us about the approach that they're intending to use? And quite often they're not particularly bothered about us actually providing that facilitation support. They just want to use us as a critical friend and to sense check that what they're doing is the right approach, or they're going about it in the right way. So that's been quite nice, and that's occurring more and more frequently now. Lots of people coming back to us to say, got this improvement piece of work I need to do, my manager's asked me to look at this, can I just talk it through with you? And I think that's something we find really rewarding, isn't it, Emma?
Yeah, I was just going to say, what we tend to find as well after the training is people express an interest in shadowing. And we get a few people come to us afterwards and say, can we come and shadow you for a week, or just shadow a workshop? And so we invite people to come along and see how we actually deliver the workshops in the real world. And they get a lot of value from that. And we actually ended up with somebody who came on the training and then did a bit of shadowing, then ended up joining our team on a secondment for I think it was 12 months. So it just kind of leads to opportunities if you're really interested, and it gives people that in to find out a little bit more about what we do and how we do it as well.
We've got a couple of comments on the board around the barriers that are quite interesting. So something around trainees having concerns about handling tricky situations and difficult questions. And then also helping them overcome those barriers, being honest about how daunting it can be, and use stories as per at the session yesterday. And that's something that we do definitely do in the workshop facilitation training. Myself and Emma bite the bullet and tell our most embarrassing facilitation stories, including the one when I advised people at a staff away day that if they wanted to use the bathroom to please step outside to do so, when I was actually meaning if you want to answer a phone call, please step outside to do so. That was within the first couple of minutes of the session, and I almost died of embarrassment. So we are really honest. We tell them some of our real horror stories, but use that as a learning experience to tell them how we manage that and what we learned from that, and how they can avoid that kind of similar situation, or what to do if things don't always go right. And as Emma said earlier, that's how you learn. They're the ones that are the real key learning experiences. So we're really honest about that in the session.
Yeah, we also cover on the training a short section on what to do when things go wrong. And so we kind of want to express that, some workshops don't go to plan, and sort of how to prepare for that, if you can ever prepare for that, I guess. And we kind of jokingly say that there are only two things that will ever go wrong in your workshop. One is technology and the other is people. Now the technology you can normally do something about, if the screens aren't working or the monitor goes off, you can kind of fix that. So it's kind of, don't freak out, don't panic, just kind of get in touch with IT or facilities or someone just to see if you can get things back up and running. But we do talk about the people element, and obviously that's the kind of difficult thing. You can't control people. If someone is kind of set on disrupting your workshop, it does take some confidence and some kind of skills to be able to manage that. But we do kind of think, it's worth telling people to prepare for that and just, think about how you would manage it. But like we said, don't be afraid if it happens, just kind of learn from it and just think about what you would do next time as well. Seeing the one about what CI qualifications do you hold? And I kind of laughed a little bit because none really.
It's our secret shame. Don't disown us, please. Don't throw us out of the group.
But I think that's actually really important. As I said, people kind of say we can't do what you do, but actually a lot of the time I don't want to say we make it up as we go along, because that sounds really unprofessional, but we learn as we go along. We learn from each other, and we observe other people around us who we think are good facilitators and good workshop deliverers, and we kind of pick up things from them as well. So we've done lean training. We did yellow belt, I think it was a couple of years ago, and it was fine. And then we kind of applied some of it, but actually we don't hold any qualifications in CI. We've just learned through doing, and I think a lot of people in this kind of environment are in the same position as well. yeah, we can share the A3 improvement charter.
Yeah.
Your trainees know this might become an expectation. It is an optional course, so once they've done the 4-part modular training, there is no expectation that they have to do this session. It's entirely up to them, because it is very much about them developing their own skills. If they're not interested in becoming a facilitator, that's perfectly fine. They don't have to come on the training.